Good evening, Community for Exceptional Minds. We're in a different room of the house. We're in the living room, so I have to keep my voice really low because Cyrus is already asleep. Okay, quickly, earlier today, my very, very dear friend shared a really important message about you, and you are essential. It was a really good word of wisdom. So if you can tune in to our episode earlier today, you are essential. So I wanted to make sure that the page I read from you in The World According to Mr. Rogers aligned with that, especially with what we're going through in our season of quarantine. So on page 70, there's something unique about being a member of a family that really needs you in order to function. One of the deepest longings a person can have is to feel needed and essential. So not only to me, not only to Lisa, my good friend earlier, but you are essential to so many people, but especially to your family right now. So really take that in and just know that you are loved and you are valued and you are essential. Okay, so we're going to continue on with our book, Uniquely Human, A Different Way of Seeing Autism. Chapter 3, Enthusiasms. We're continuing on the top of page 59. The King of Car Washes and Other Remarkable Tales of Passion. Once a child becomes aware of such a performance, what begins as a pleasurable sensory sensation often transforms into a focus of attention, interest, and preoccupation. The child seeks out what brings the positive feelings, and it can occupy his thoughts at all hours of the day. Car washes caught Alexander's attention. From an early age, when his father took the family car for its occasional cleaning, Alexander was simultaneously fascinated and frightened by the sound, the splashing water, the brushes, the sight of the cars making their way through. Alexander couldn't explain why, but he begged his parents to take him back again and again so he could watch and listen. They visited so often that the owner of the local car wash befriended the family, welcoming Alexander to come out at the entrance by waving his arms to direct drivers into the wash. His parents didn't understand what motivated Alexander's fascination, but they could see how happy it made him. Other children savored amusement parks or fast cars or ski slopes. Their son delighted in car washes. Whenever the family traveled, they sought out car washes and mapped their journeys accordingly, visiting car washes from Florida to Maine. At each stop on the tour, Alexander excitedly stood outside, surveying the grounds and taking in the operation the way another child might watch an NBA game or an action movie. When he was 10, his parents contacted the International Car Wash Association to request brochures they thought Alexander might enjoy. To their surprise, that led to a dream vacation for Alexander. Not a trip to Disney World or Hawaii, but to Las Vegas. As an honored guest at the association's annual convention, he was so filled with excitement that for 3 nights he could barely sleep. Alexander's father called him the King of Car Washes. Then there was Chad. His passion was garden sprinklers. Everywhere he went as a child and teen, he would search the ground for pop-up sprinklers. At a park crowded for holiday fireworks, Chad would keep his eyes on the ground, searching out the sprinkler heads. When he found one, he would pull it up to identify the maker. At age 8, he could tell a toro from an orbit from a rainbird. When he drew pictures in art class, along with the animals and trees, he always included a sprinkler head popping up from the ground and shooting a spray of water into the air. What inspired his fondness for garden sprinklers? Well, perhaps it started as a sensory experience. Perhaps Chad was intrigued by the sight and sound of sprinklers popping out of the ground, then mysteriously disappearing, or the gentle sensations of water sprinkling over the grass. Over time, his interest morphed into preoccupation. In unfamiliar surroundings, he found it difficult to focus on anything else. He surveyed the area and found the sprinklers. And while it certainly wasn't what was occupying the attention of other children his age, his parents appreciated that their son had found something that brought him joy. Other dads took their kids to baseball games or fishing. Chad's dad surfed eBay to purchase second-hand sprinkler heads. Chad would give them names and toted them to school in his backpack. His parents drew smiley faces on the sprinkler heads. Sometimes Chad took them to bed with him at night like stuffed animals. These deep interests can help children stay more engaged and attentive. They can be used to motivate learning and to enable participation in situations that might otherwise have been difficult. That was true for Ken, a teenager with autism. From a very young age, Ken was fascinated with drawing, not so much artistically, but simply focused on drawing lines on paper. Over time, he began interested in solving mazes, staring intently at a page while using a pen or pencil to make his way through the labyrinth. The appeal for Ken wasn't just drawing lines, it was solving problems. Each maze offered a sense of logic and order, a beginning and an end. Wherever the family went, Ken would bring his maze books. Though he communicated very little in speech, he was learning to use a speech generating device. His parents always brought him to meetings of his educational team, as they knew he could understand more than he could say. Merely sitting and listening to a meeting would have proved challenging, but Ken's stack of maze books helped him to stay in the room. While he did his mazes, he was engaged in the meeting, looking on intently when he was interested in the conversation, turning his attention back to his maze when he wasn't. With this strategy, Ken was able to stay focused and well-regulated by shifting his attention away from the more demanding task of following the conversation to an activity with which he felt more competent. Many people with autism find it helpful to bring a toy or other item or an activity related to an enthusiasm to settings that may pose difficulties, such as restaurants, family events, or larger group activities at school. Almost any enthusiasm can help in this manner. 5-year-old Vinny's interests was Auric vacuum cleaners. When Vinny was feeling overwhelmed at school, he would often ask to go to the bathroom, whether or not he needed to. There he would take refuge in a stall, sometimes refusing to come back to class. His mother devised a unique strategy to use his interest in a way to provide a break when he needed one, especially from large group activities. She collected OREC catalogs, cut out pictures of vacuum cleaners, and organized them in a book she titled Vinny's Happy Book. When he needed a break from large group classroom activities, he could ask for the Happy Book and sit in a corner on a beanbag chair for a few minutes, examining photos of uprights and canisters and refueling before he rejoined his classmates. Some enthusiasms come and go as passing phases, and others last decades. Specific deep interests may have more obvious connections to future hobbies. Matt was passionate about everything related to time. When he was a young child, and I visited his classroom as a school consultant, he would rush up to me and grab my arm to see my wristwatch. "Dr. Barry," he would say, without looking at me, "it's 9:15 in the morning." It was his entree to a social connection. One December morning, when he was just over 5 years old, he was filled with excitement as he told me his latest discovery. "Dr. Barry, do you know what happens after 11:59 p.m. on December 31st? "What?" I asked. His body tensed and he raised himself up on tiptoes, hands flapping like wings on a bird. "The big ball comes down," he said, his face lighting up with joy, "and it becomes the next year." This was his enthusiasm, his way of having a conversation, of sharing what he knew and cared about. Years later, as a young adult, Matt remained enthusiastic about clocks and time, even preferring sports with a time element, such as hockey, over those without, such as baseball. 9-year-old Danny's enthusiasm was spices used in cooking. As a young boy, he often watched his mother working in the kitchen. Without any kind of formal introduction, he took an interest in seasonings she used. He made a habit of organizing the spices in alphabetical order, and later took up watching cooking shows on TV and searching food websites. He became an expert in regional variations of barbecue, reeling off the differences among the styles from Texas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and South Carolina. His parents couldn't identify what first piqued his interest in these topics or why they appealed to him, but clearly he found them fulfilling. His mother imagined it might lead Danny to attend a college for culinary arts and become a chef. Far from wanting to redirect him, his parents took great pride in Danny's expertise and found his enthusiasm infectious. That's how I felt when I met Brandon. I was visiting the classroom in a district I advised when one of the therapists introduced me to an adorable and wonderful, articulate 4-year-old who immediately told me his family had just relocated to the town. "What state are you from?" he asked immediately. I told him I lived in Rhode Island. "Province, Rhode Island?" he asked. "Just outside Province," I told him. "Province is kind of a small city," he said. "Do you like big cities?" I told him I did, that I had grown up in New York City. Brandon's eyes lit up. You grew up in New York City? He asked. My family likes to visit New York City, and I love New York City. We stay at the Marriott Marquis in Times Square. We always stay on the 16th floor because the 16th floor has the best views of all the sights in Times Square. He went on to tell me the numbers of the various rooms they had stayed in on recent visits, and which ones had the best views. I asked what he liked to look at from the hotel room windows. As he answered, he got a distant look, as if he were running a video of the scene in his mind. There was a billboard for Nike with a picture of Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, over there. He began pointing at the classroom wall, then continued to describe the entire panorama in mind's eye. Okay, let's see how long the next section is. Okay, we should just do it. Only 2 more pages until the end of the chapter. We can do this. Using interests to build connections. When a child fixates on a topic, the way Brandon did on New York, and we join with the child, we can make the enthusiasm the basis for building relationships and trust. One significant reason many children focus on a particular topic is that it gives them a safe place to start a conversation. Even the most obscure, out of context, and seemingly irrelevant question, what's your favorite dog breed? What kind of refrigerator do you have? Can be a strategy to connect. Whenever Brandon saw me, he seized the chance to talk to me about New York. Did you live in Manhattan? Or one of the other 4 boroughs? Brooklyn, which part? That wasn't the end of the conversation, just the beginning. Often an enthusiasm refers to a hook to engage a child, the lure to bring him into an activity or a conversation. Once he is engaged, we can gradually change or expand the subject and test his flexibility and willingness. Of course, how much is possible greatly depends on the child's level of development. But with creativity, parents and teachers can use the child's passion for a topic to motivate him to become more engaged socially and to solve problems. Matt, for example, was enrolled in a mainstream kindergarten class, but his teacher questioned whether he belonged there. One issue: he had trouble staying focused in group activities. He would participate in the class's morning meeting solely by chanting the days of the week when asked, but then tuned out the rest of the discussion, apparently lost in his thoughts. Matt's mother knew her 5-year-old did pay attention to Winnie the Pooh. Matt loved the Disney movie and talked endlessly about its characters. His mother brought the teacher a few packs of stickers with various Pooh characters. If you can find a way to incorporate these into morning time, she said, maybe Matt will be more engaged. The teacher introduced the stickers at the next morning circle, assigning a character to each day of the week. Monday was Tigger Day, Tuesday, Roo Day, Wednesday, Eeyore Day. That was enough to engage Matt far more than previously, and the other children in the class were happy to join him in using the character names for the days of the week. Instead of considering Matt's fixation a detrimental factor that separated him from his peers, The teacher successfully used it as a way to connect him with his classmates and with the material she was teaching, the days of the week and the months of the year. He became more willing to participate with his peers than ever before and was less distracted because she provided a way to engage Matt so that he could continue to progress. The same kind of growth and development can occur when families find ways to acknowledge and honor a child's particular interest and integrate it into family routines. I saw this years ago when a father asked me to meet his teenage son. Hakeem, a student at an international school in Kuwait, to offer advice about both his school and home life. Sorry, my contact. Though the boy had many of the challenges common to autism, it was clear from observing him that he had far more flexibility and resilience than many such children. I soon learned that was largely thanks to his parents' very open approach to his enthusiasms. When I visited their home, the first thing they shared with me was Hakeem's fascination with trains, and in particular, train schedules. They explained that they had encouraged him to take an active role in planning the family's annual August vacation to Europe. The parents gave the boy a voice in choosing destinations. Then they spent months researching the particulars, assembling maps, guidebooks, and all of the information necessary for the planning. Once the family had determined the general shape of the trip, it was up to Hakeem to figure out the particulars, which train they would take, how many days they would stay in a city, and when they would move on to the next destination. They showed me scrapbooks they had assembled for each trip, with photographs and clippings from brochures and maps. Each section of the book started with a train schedule, clearly emblematic of how the family celebrated Hakeem's interests. By acknowledging and honoring their son's focus on train schedules, they had helped him to become more engaged with his family and the world, and with a healthy sense of self. Not only did Hakeem have a remarkable breadth of knowledge of European cities and landmarks, but he felt like a valued member of his family. I didn't plan that, but with Lisa's encouragement that you are essential, let's just reread quickly the part in the world according to Mr. Rogers. There's something unique about a member of a family that really needs you in order to function well. One of the deepest longings a person can have is to feel needed and essential. I hope you have a wonderful evening. It's always such a pleasure just to have this time together. Remember, community and connectedness, that's what this channel is all about. And I just hope that you feel honored, that you feel loved, and just remember you are important.